The Minister of State for Petroleum Resources has told Nigerians to prepare for a higher pump price of petrol as a result of rising crude oil prices in the international market. He made this announcement at the inauguration of the Nigerian Upstream Cost Optimization Program, an initiative which the federal government aims to ramp up plans to achieve a $10 per barrel crude oil production target from the current prices of $30 per barrel for joint venture agreements and $20 per barrel for production sharing contracts. While energy expert Madaki Ameh is in our Abuja studios to speak on a lasting solution to reduce the cost of production in Nigeria's petroleum sector. Good morning and welcome to the morning show.
Good morning.
All right. Well, as you heard in my introduction last week, the Minister of State for Petroleum Resources, Mr. Timothy Silva, told Nigerians to prepare for a higher pump price of petrol as a result of the rising crude oil prices in the international market. Just a few months ago, there was outrage when the pump price of petrol was increased to 151 naira 56 kobo per litre. Now, with the price of Brent crude oil still hovering around about $60 per barrel, this price hike, as inevitable as it is, seems like it will not be coming down anytime soon, right? I mean, what's the way forward this time?
Well, I think it's kind of funny that we keep coming back to the same common denominator in our discussions about the downstream sector of the petroleum industry. Barely a year ago, we were here having the same conversation about the regulation. At that time, the cost of crude oil in the international market had actually crashed to sub-zero. And when, that's during the lockdown, as a result of COVID-19 last year, at about now and, sometime between now and sometime in March last year, when the price of crude oil fell to less than $0 a barrel. And then there was this issue of, okay, finally, where the economy was going to crash and the country was going to go broke. I was invited on Arise TV around that time, and my view was that low oil prices is actually good for the Nigerian economy, because the way we have structured our industry over time has created a situation where anytime the price of crude oil goes up in the international market, instead of the citizens to rejoice, they hold their breaths, and then they get panicky over the fact that the price of the product at the pump will go up. And this has been happening for years. It's been happening for years. We didn't feel much of the impact because at that time, the government had this subsidy regime where, no matter what happened in the industry, prices of PMS at least were sold, were kept at the same level. But when the price of crude oil fell to sub-zero during the lockdown as a result of COVID last year, and then the government reduced the pump price of petrol, to 125 naira per litre, I saw it as a booby trap. And I had actually warned at that time that this booby trap was not going to last, because when the prices come back up, then the government will find a justification for piling up the prices and increasing the inconvenience to the citizens, and that exactly happened. So, when the prices went back up, to market prices after the shock as a result of the lockdown, prices again started inching up, and we are at where we are now, between 162 and 165 naira per litre. This is going to continue to be a vicious cycle unless we get a handle on it. How do we get a handle on it? We get a handle on it, by beginning to think differently about the barrel. I've been preaching this concept since 2012, when we had the first major industrial action as a result of the pricing of petroleum products. But it doesn't look like the government is interested in listening. When the Jonathan administration was on, one of the things that really gave that government a bad press was the incessant increases in the pump price of petrol, and the fact that, subsidy was consuming a huge chunk of the national budget. And this government, the Buhari administration, when they were campaigning for office in 2014, had actually said that subsidy is a fraud, and that whoever said that subsidy in the industry is actually being fraudulent, and that when they come, they will eliminate subsidy. We are shocked that 4 years down the road and counting, we're into the 5th year now, they're still, crystallizing the idea of subsidy and sustaining, in fact, paying more subsidy than the Jonathan administration paid. And it's all because of inefficient thinking around the barrel of crude oil. We cannot be producing crude oil, and depending on the international price of crude to determine what the local cost of the product at the pump will be. The lame argument about the fact that our refineries are never working and that we are importing the product is a complete fallacy, because even today, we can sell a liter of PMS at 100 naira, we can sell a liter of AGO at 100 naira, we can sell a liter of DPK at 100 naira, and it will still be profitable to the government, if only they are prepared to do the right thinking around the barrel. And honestly, I can't preach this enough. This idea of, when the pump price, when the price of crude oil goes up by $1 in the international market, everybody is jubilating and saying, maybe we will meet our budget benchmark for the price, meet our budget benchmark, which is fixed artificially anyhow, year by year by the National Assembly based on nothing, really. It's a joke. It's a joke because I think we are still not understanding the way the industry works, and we are not prepared to think outside the box. So when I hear you say that, the government is setting up a committee to drive down the unit Opex, it's actually a huge fraud. There is no way you can say that the unit Opex of crude oil is $30 a barrel, for joint venture, and $20 a barrel for production sharing contracts. It's so way out. There's a huge fraud going on in the oil industry called, unit Opex padding. The same way the National Assembly pads budgets, that's how the oil companies pad, the unit operating expenditure of a barrel of crude. No matter how inefficiently you operate, there's no way you can put a drum of crude oil in, because the barrel is just about a drum. It's less actually than a drum. It's about 190 liters. There's no way you can put 190 liters of dirty stuff that comes from the ground into into what you call a barrel, and you say it's $30. How? What are the components of this pricing that makes it $30? So it is in that there are notional padded costs that you see all of the the inefficiencies in the industry, which we the Nigerians are expected to pay for. Way back in when I was in Shell, and I was the vice chairman of Pengasan, the company wanted to downsize and cream off the top layer of the Nigerian staff, and their reason at that time was that the unit operating expenditure of the company was too high. I think they were giving us a figure of like $15 a barrel at the time. And as a unionist, if you don't have information, you are not able to counter the position of management. And at that time, because the top management were threatened, we became privy to some information from DPR directly, which compared the unit operating expenditure of all the five major oil companies in Nigeria. And to our shock, Shell, that was said to be the least efficient among their peers, was actually delivering a unit Opex as at 2007, 2008 of $3.50 per barrel. If we're doing $3.50 per barrel in 2007, how can we now be doing $30 for the same barrel? And Shell runs a joint venture. What was the cost component that increased the unit Opex from $3.50 a barrel based on DPR information, that was classified in 2007? And then that same barrel has become $30. That shows you why the country runs at a loss, runs its oil industry at a loss, but those who are around the barrel are feeding fat and buying private jets. So it is in this unit Opex, that all the inefficiencies are carried.
Mr. Madaki, I'm sorry, I'll have to interrupt you here. We'll have to go on a short break, and when we come back, we'll continue on the topic of Nigeria's upstream cost optimization program. Do stay with us. Welcome back to the morning show. Mr. Madaki Ameh is still in our Abuja studio talking about the rise in petroleum. Mr. Madaki, we were talking about the Nigerian upstream cost optimization program, which you said is a fraud. The minister says, though, that it will position Nigeria as the best designation for investment in the hydrocarbon sector. He said that one of its benefits will be reducing the contracting cycle within stakeholders to 3 months or less, which will then prompt efficiency, profitability, and competitiveness. Now it's left for the stakeholders to come together and collaborate. Do you see that this would come easy, given the history of weak collaboration among stakeholders?
No, I don't think that's going to achieve any tangible results. We've seen so many of these kind of optimization programs before in the industry. But without the will to get it done, it's never going to happen. They will hold meetings, they will spend a lot of money, debating the same problems over and over again, and then at the end of the day, nothing will be achieved. I think that what the government should do is to hold the oil companies to account a lot more. Because you see, when the oil companies pad unit operating expenditure, they pass the cost to the joint venture. And when they pass that cost to the joint venture, it doesn't then matter what the sharing formula is, for the joint venture at any point in time, because they've already collected their money upfront, from the unit operating expenditure. And this has been going on for so many years, I'm shocked that the government doesn't know that this is going on, And so what they should do is to put them on the back foot. The best place to get data on the industry at this time is from Wood Mackenzie. Wood Mackenzie keeps the best data on the oil and gas industry all over the world. And if you look at the latest information from Wood Mackenzie, the unit operating expenditure for the Nigerian oil and gas industry is not anywhere near $30 a barrel or $30 a barrel for joint ventures and $20 a barrel for PSCs. And in fact, I'm still even at a loss why there should be a disparity between the unit operating expenditure per barrel based on whether it's a PSC you are running or a JV. Because, at the end of the day, the barrel is the barrel. And to achieve, to arrive at the unit Opex of the product, you are just dividing the cost of production by your volume of production. So it's not rocket science. So why do we keep creating disparities that create corruption within our industry? We're already complaining that the oil industry is sufficiently opaque. It's already a very opaque industry because of the way they have run it. But they increase that opaqueness by introducing some, completely unreasonable, concepts that doesn't make any economic sense. I don't know whether they don't have petroleum economists, helping to do some thinking around what's going on, So, but again, it probably is because the industry is being run politically as opposed to economically. There are very sound technocrats within the industry who clearly know what to do. But it looks like the political overhang, around the oil and gas industry, which is actually a dying industry at this time, is what's creating the kind of problems that we are facing. If we become honest about our oil and gas industry and stop seeing it as a cash cow, for people who just want to make easy money, then we begin to move inch closer, to the model that enables us to deliver pump prices of all products at the same level, whether they are deregulated or not. I worry for this country because these days nobody talks about the price of diesel or the price of kerosene anymore. And these two products, where Nigerians are being fleeced on a daily basis, are the products that affect the average Nigerian the most. With epileptic power supply, our industries rely on diesel to drive industry, which creates employment. So if the price of diesel is left to whoever imports it to determine how he wants to sell it, then what you are saying in effect is that we can never produce competitively in an environment where power supply is so epileptic, and even when it is not epileptic, the cost is so high these days that industry cannot legitimately pay it. You get the point? So where are we going to hide? Then the average Nigerian, in the villages and even in the towns, depend on kerosene for cooking. You say you have deregulated kerosene, so they can buy it at any price. And this idea of deregulation, of some of the products is because they know that the users of those products cannot go on the streets and start protesting where the prices go up. Why does our government always do this to us? Why do they just not take any form of interest in the way the citizens, survive? Because, at some time, I ask myself, what do we need a government for in this country? What does government do for us in this country? In other countries, government is empathetic. Government tries to cushion the cost of living on a day-to-day basis for its citizens. Look at COVID. COVID devastated the world. Most countries in the world had palliatives for their citizens. Nigeria had nothing. They left us, to the dogs, and they came up with some bogus palliatives that never ended up in the pockets of anybody. Why do we keep doing this all the time? And then when people want to protest, they say, well, why are they protesting? I think that the impression I get is that there are some people in government who actually research into how to make life difficult for its citizens.
Understood.
Otherwise, why will we be talking of increasing price of products right now? Why will you be talking of increasing the price of products right now when there is hardly any disposable income left for citizens? You have a national minimum wage of 30,000 naira, which most states say they cannot even pay. At the end of the day, you increase the pump price of petrol to 192 naira, which I hear is where they are going. And if it stops at 192 naira, you will not even have a problem. It can go as high as 250, which is around where diesel is right now. The point I've always made is that if you look at the international price of the products, diesel is cheaper than petrol. So why should a deregulated petrol be selling at 162 naira and a deregulated diesel be selling at 220 or 230 naira per liter? So everything is upside down in Nigeria, and I really don't understand how we can be running an oil and gas industry at a loss. Even with your two eyes closed. Let me come in here. There's no way we can run the industry at a loss.
Thank you. If we look at the petroleum industry or the energy industry in terms of our resource wealth, from the inside looking out, we know that the Independent Petroleum Marketers Association says that it already controls around 80% of the country's downstream operations, and as a result has asked or called on the federal government, to release Nigeria's 3 refineries to it. Do you think that that's firstly a good idea, and do you think that the government will in fact turn those refineries over to private control?
Honestly, nobody knows why the government is holding on to the refineries. The refineries for decades have been a loss-making business. So if anybody, understands the way governance is supposed to be handled and they are determined to do it well, there's no reason why you will hold on to a loss-making business. Every month, each of these refineries post losses in the billions, maybe like 10, 15 billion a month. And then you are still keeping them. We have 4 refineries. All of them are moribund at the same time. Every minister of petroleum that comes promises that the refineries will be functional just about the time his tenure is about to expire. The same for every group managing director of an NPC. And they have been doing this clever, buck passing for quite some time. A man takes over a job maybe in 2019, and then he says by 2023, the refineries will be functional, because he knows that is when his tenure will be expiring. You know, we have been hearing this on and on and on. Kachiku said the same thing. Of course, the refinery didn't function until he left. You know, we have been hearing the same from even the current Minister of State for Petroleum. They keep shifting the goalpost so that Nigerians will not hold them accountable until their tenures are about to expire.
Well, I'm sorry, but I feel like we have come to the end of this interview. Thank you so much for your insight.